Basketball is very good. Luka Doncic will fall out of the top 5. Mo Bamba will be the best big in the draft. SGA will go ahead of Trey Young. Basketball is very good.
Hello, and welcome to the Ringer NBA show. I think we're calling this one drafting group chat. That just rolls off the tongue.
That's beautiful.
That's because I'm here with One Shining Podcast, Tate Frazier.
Woo! Happy to be here.
And I'm also here with draft classes, Danny Chau and Kevin O'Connor.
What up?
I'm Chris Ryan. I usually host group chat. We wanted to bring the Voltron together to talk about the NBA draft. It's about 48 hours away. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. It'll be up and in your ears on Wednesday morning. I'm sure by then Puma will have signed half of the 2026 draft class.
Yes.
We'll all be wearing Pumas by then. Let's start at the top of the draft, because the one thing that we seem to know for certain is that DeAndre Ayton's going to go number 1. The other thing that we know for certain is DeAndre Ayton apparently models his personality off of Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Because my guy's got a bunch of alter egos. Is this a red flag, Kevin O'Connor? According to your own Weitzman Slam magazine story, DeAndre Ayton has several alter egos, including Josh, a quote generic white dude. I'm not sure if I should feel offended by that. Eric, a dude who loves Fortnite, and then 2 other guys named Rodrigo and Alejandro.
That's not a personality quirk. A dude who likes Fortnite? That's not compelling at all.
That's true.
It's very modern.
Yeah. I think this is just supposed to be a bit of color. DeAndre Ayton has the number 1 pick locked up, but any nerves about Ayton?
I just want to know which one of those alter egos is the one that manifests on the court when he just doesn't try protecting the rim.
I think that's the Fortnite guy. I think because he's rather be playing Fortnite.
I want to know which is the one that goes hard on offense, that just throws down ferocious dunks, because be that guy all the time on the court. If you have multiple personalities, use that one all the time on the basketball court.
See, I haven't talked to you about the draft yet, really. Do you think it's silly that Ayton has been the number 1 pick for a month now?
I think it's a little bit of an Arizona bias. I think as soon as he went there and Phoenix had the first pick, he even tweeted out, he was like, I'm going number 1. I'm excited about it. I think the personality thing, it rubs me the wrong way, just because it reminds me of Dwight Howard, where he's trying to do the Shaq thing.
Yeah, and it's also why are these guys modeling themselves after JaVale McGee? Yeah, it's like him. Well,
NBA champion.
Carl Anthony Towns. That's
probably why.
Carl Anthony Towns had Carlito for a little bit. His little bit as
Carlito's
a little.
way.
Oh, that's right.
Little guy on the side of his shoulder, kind of telling him what to do. It's a weird bit that we're taking into this weird zone where
I can't believe I finally am seeing you get old. You're now these kids today.
Just completely cantankerous. Yeah, I don't get it.
The number 1 pick is pretty much locked up. We can question DeAndre Ayton's championship level mental toughness. We'll have plenty of time to do that when Phoenix is good in 5 or 6 years.
Oh man,
the agents of chaos in this draft are definitely the Sacramento Kings, because it's 48 hours until the draft, and we still don't know what Vlade and Vivek are going to do. It was Luka for a while. Now, by all accounts, Kevin, it seems like Bagley is starting to settle in as the consensus number 2 pick.
It does sound like it's going to be Marvin Bagley. Around the time that the NBA draft lottery happened last month, the noise was that Sacramento liked Marvin Bagley and Michael Porter. Porter has kind of fizzled, and at least for them, it seems like a little bit. So maybe if it's not Bagley, it would be Luka Doncic, but all indications as of now, 48 hours until the draft, seems like it'll be Marvin Bagley.
Congratulations, Puma. You've done it. The top 2 picks.
And congratulations to Duke University for producing another NBA star.
Yeah, sorry, actually.
Another one.
I was incorrect with what I was going to say. Never mind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You sound like Vlade Divac.
I hope we keep that in. Tate, I know that you have a complicated relationship with Duke University.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about Bagley's prospects as a professional athlete?
I think that Puma proved that Bagley's the number 1 pick in their mind. They drafted him first. That was their big signing, the first one since Durant. So they were like, this is our guy. Durant went number 2 too. People forget that happened.
Yeah.
I love Marvin Bagley's game. I like Marvin Bagley's dad. I like the whole family. I like what they did to Nike. I like how they played this long con on them and then signed with Puma at the last hour. I think he's just, what's the word they say? Springy? Is that what they say in his draft pocket? He's a very springy guy, gets up and down. I'm not really worried about the defense. I know a lot of people that's like the talk that he's not a great defender, but
he thinks he's a great defender.
he said he's a great
Yeah.
defender, but he just has a lot to learn, which I don't know. That's a little bit of an oxymoron or contradiction, but I do believe in Bagley. I like Bagley. There's no Duke hate with Marvin Bagley for
Okay.
me. Wendell
Danny-
Carter, on the other hand, I will have some
We'll
thoughts.
get to Wendell because he could be a future Sixer. I want to talk to you about him. But Danny, last year around this time, the thing that we were talking about with the Kings a lot was this need for a culture change. And that
Right.
was sort of behind the Zebo and Vince signings. And that was largely, I think, is for as much as hot as people were for De'Aaron Fox, it was this idea that they were going to get this super competitive point guard who was going to set the tone for years to come.
George Hill.
Like, you think George Hill could have done
Yeah,
that?
that was George Hill.
That was George Hill.
LeBron stole him away.
Well, if last year was a culture reset, what's this year about for the Kings? Why Bagley for them?
They just need proven talent at this point. They need a guy who can be a marquee guy. I think with De'Aaron Fox last year, yes, he was exactly the guy that they wanted to grab, but he didn't really have that stellar of a year. He was very much outshadowed by like 4 different point guards from the
Dennis
class.
Smith, Donovan Mitchell. I mean, yeah, the
Lonzo?
list, even like Frank
Fox,
Smoke.
Fox had some moments,
Right.
to be fair.
Yeah, and he had some clutch moments.
Yes.
The moments that he did have were like, oh, wow. Okay,
Mhm.
so this guy is a gamer. But, they need a guy who can really just kind of anchor their perception around the league. Like,
Yeah.
a guy who, maybe another guy like DeMarcus Cousins who can automatically give you 20 and 10.
That
Maybe
worked out.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what they're kind of building towards. Like, we need a guy who could actually put up those numbers,
The thing with the Kings, Kev, is that for as much as they need somebody like Bagley to anchor perception, as Danny said, because they're still a team that a lot of people are skeptical about. A lot of people are skeptical about. There's rumors, Jonathan Givney said on Zach Lowe's podcast, that Jaren Jackson and Mo Bamba and Luka had all withheld medicals from Sacramento. There just seems to be a lot of chaos around this pick too, where there was talk that they could trade out. There was talk that they might reach for Porter. How important is it for Vlade to get this right?
I think, like JG said, Jonathan Givony said on that podcast as well, where I think for them, it's also about getting a guy that wants you, right? So Marvin Bagley is the guy who seems to be open to going to Sacramento. He'd be happy to go to Sacramento, whereas with those others, maybe not so much. I think even more so than changing the perception about your team, it doesn't matter if the guy wants you. It shouldn't matter. Just draft a guy that you think gets you in the best position to actually build a winning team. If that's Luka Doncic, bring him in and sell him on Sacramento. Like, 'cause those fans were really, really good when that team was winning. So it's like, if Luka can bring back winning to Sacramento alongside De'Aaron Fox, then beautiful.
And those
Great.
fans really, really want Luka.
Yes.
They are all like, so there was a Twitch account that we were all watching the ACB final game on. Almost the entire chat was populated by Kings fans. I didn't know that there were that many Kings fans online.
They're a vocal and motivated bunch.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that, and that, like, on the other side, like, that probably shouldn't matter for Luka. No matter where he goes, he's going to be
Right.
loved and whatever. But if Sacramento feels like Luka is the guy that they should take and he's not giving medical, I mean, maybe that's a risk you can't take without medical. But if you feel confident that he's the guy in this draft, just do it. Just take the guy, in my opinion.
And I want to defend those guys for not giving their medicals because the Kings leak everything.
Right.
All I ever see is various King sources say insert whatever, and it could be conflicting reports.
Sure.
So I wouldn't want to give my medical over to some team that's going to leak it out and say, "Hey, Michael Porter Jr. has like a bum hip," or
They'll probably
Mo Bamba has
sign
like
him
a
up
knee
for a
injury.
bunch of mailing lists with their medicals.
Yeah, and then your email's blown up.
Dear
Yeah.
Michael, we hear that your back ribs are hurting.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about this brace?
Yeah, I just think that's like so smart on their
All
part.
these like
what-
targeted Instagram ads suddenly.
Oh no. Yeah.
There seems to be like it seems like the Suns and the Kings are going to really obviously with the 1 and 2 picks. I don't mean to say this is an obvious thing where they're going to define the way this first round goes, but the Kings can either throw this draft into chaos, but let's say the Kings do the quote unquote smart thing and take the Duke kid at 2. Take Bagley, right? Not Wendell. Do you think that then that really is Luka in play to slip, or do you think that Atlanta or Memphis is going to be right there to pounce on Luka?
Yeah, I kind of don't feel like he slips past 4 or 5.
I think he could.
So
Theoretically.
can you tell me why?
Theoretically.
Is it out of because people are skeptical of him, or is it because people have their heart set on players like Jaren Jackson or Mo Bamba?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I think we're finding out how teams actually value Luka Doncic right now compared to some of these big men like Jaren Jackson Jr., one of the youngest guys in the draft, 18 years old, multi-positional defender with one of the biggest wingspans in the draft aside from Mo Bamba. Somebody who can stretch the floor from three, who's moved a little bit better off the dribble than you would think. So I think it's easy to see like why you might fall in love with Jaren Jackson over Luka Doncic. Granted, he's my number one prospect, Doncic is, but for some of these teams, maybe they just value the big man moving forward. Maybe they perceive the big man as the position of need in the 2020s. Adding a big man to look ahead rather than focus on right now. Everybody's talking about today's league. Oh, can this guy play in today's league? It's like, no, teams are drafting for the 2020s, not for the 2018-19 season. So if Atlanta wants a big, I can't fault them at all for taking Jaren Jackson. Same with Memphis at 4. And there's a question if Luka would want to go there as well.
One thing about Jaren Jackson that I will say, I think you brought up about Wendell Carter. He didn't take over 10 shots, I think, except for like 5 or 6 games this season. Jaren Jackson had Nick Ward at Michigan State, and Nick Ward was basically taking minutes away from him. So you haven't seen the full potential of Jaren Jackson when a team is built around him and he's a central figure. Because Izzo is a college coach. He's built in the way where I'm going to play my veteran. And Nick Ward would have fought him if he didn't play. So he had to play him at this point. So that gives me a little bit of belief that Jaren Jackson.
But you could be skeptical for the same exact reason, right? Because we've never actually, and I've heard other people say this, you've never seen Jaren Jackson be the best guy on the floor, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're basically, you have to wonder, am I giving up a third pick for a dude that I'm not even sure has ever like dominated a competitive game since we've been on national television?
It's a lot of projection, but it's a lot of projection that's easy to project. Like he has such a defined skill set for the future of the NBA that you can see him, and especially with his 7'5" wingspan, the fact that he can guard out on the perimeter, that pretty much sells me. The fact that he can also hit threes at a 40% clip in college, very, very enticing as a prospect.
So what makes him more interesting to you than Wendell, who also had to play sort of second string star to Bagley at Duke, if not third string behind Grayson?
Jaren Jackson doesn't have like 2 like lead feet.
That's Chaos, you're so hurt by
Wendell
this.
Carter doesn't have lead feet. I don't think. I mean, I feel like his mobility.
Do you think Al Horford has lead feet?
A little bit.
No.
Because this is the comp, right? That's like the
my
dream
question
comp.
is, what is the bar to be an effective defensive player as a big man? Like everybody's saying, like, oh, he doesn't move like AD or Draymond Green. It's like, yeah, nobody does.
Yeah.
So it's like these guys are in a class of their own. It's like Wendell Carter, I think, with NBA conditioning, getting in the best shape of his life, all those cliches that are accurate and true for professional athletes. I think he can easily get better than where he is now, which isn't that bad, at least in my opinion. But I mean, I feel like I'm on an island sometimes with Wendell. I might even have him ahead of Jaren Jackson in the final rankings.
I don't mind Wendell Carter being a top 10 or a lottery pick in the NBA draft, but I think when you have Bamba, that's 7'10" wingspan. I just don't know how you get over that. I mean, I would just if I'm a GM, you're just like, I don't know. We can make it work.
Yeah,
I can't get fired getting a guy with a 7'10" wingspan.
Exactly. No one's gonna be mad at me. But Carter is such an old school big man that if you do that, and the NBA, is in this modern version that everyone keeps saying, then you look like you're living in the past a little bit.
Well, that's where you get into position of where you're picking. This is the kind of interesting thing about this lottery specifically is you have a variety of different teams in a variety of different states of being right now, because you've got some teams, which you and I have talked about before, Danny, of like, they just need dudes.
Yeah.
Like there kind of isn't a bad pick. You might regret not getting the star that went after it, but you just need to make like a double to left here because you just don't have enough talent. Then there are teams whose self-perception is like, we're either making that move towards the playoffs or we are a playoff team. In the case of the Cleveland, obviously they have some question marks, and Philly. But then there seems like Chicago and even the Knicks, who were probably like, we belong in the playoffs. We want to be a playoff team. How does that kind of stuff come into play, you think, when you're talking about whether you're taking a project versus somebody with a little bit more of a proven track record who can help right away?
So those two teams you mentioned specifically, probably the two bigger markets in the lottery, those two teams were teams that just didn't tank hard enough.
Right.
And their fans just were like, why didn't you guys tank hard enough?
Yes.
And so I think with those guys, you're definitely trying to take as big a swing as possible. So I've heard, Chicago fans love Michael Porter Jr.
Right.
They want him so badly because he represents a guy that they can get at that number 7 spot while also projecting to be, this kind of, superstar talent.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I was talking about on Bill's pod on Monday when I I'm not in any way like an expert about Duke second string, like the second best dude on a Duke team. But I picked Wendell Carter, and I felt myself saying, I want someone who can play right away.
Yeah.
And I want someone who can be a little bit of Embiid insurance and be really useful, and by playoff time, be a contributor, rather than Kevin Knox, who just got brought back for another workout with apparently rumored to be at Brett Brown's request. Because I don't want to see like if an 18-year-old can figure. I'm tired
You
of
just saw
watching.
it last year.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
don't want to go through the whole thing again.
Yeah.
And I will say, Wendell Carter is, I believe, a major upgrade over Jahlil Okafor. As far as I said,
I believe too.
No, I was like, as far as being an old
Tate,
school.
there's a table over there that's a major upgrade over Jahlil Okafor.
I just would like to see a reprieve for them to get someone like Wendell Carter, because I think that he is a more modern version of Jahlil. Jahlil is like, I mean, basically an Eddie Curry type player from the early 2000s, as far as the way that he, first of all, the way he worked out and the way he treated his body and the way that he expected to live his life in the NBA. And I think Carter knows he has to be more mobile and be willing to get in shape and be able to try to make an impact early. So, I mean, it does make sense.
I also like the fact that he can handle and pass a little bit with
He's a great shooter.
and it's so
He's
because
smooth, he's
Ben is
fluid.
such a specific talent. Ben Simmons is such a specific talent. I'd love to see Wendell Carter hitting backdoor passes of Ben cutting to the rim. If Ben ever decides he likes to cut to the rim, maybe next year.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, let's
Wonderful.
go jump shot number 1, and then moving without the ball number 2 is what I'm going to say.
And you're not dealing with the ego of Okafor. When Okafor came in, he was like Dwight Howard is now. He's like, post me up, give me the ball.
Yeah.
I want to be the number one option.
Right.
Wendell Carter wasn't the number one option at Duke. He didn't have the choice to be that. And I think since he's already built that in his head, he can go in and say, okay, Embiid's the number one guy. I get that.
Yeah.
I can buy in.
So, I mean, Kev, that's what I'm talking about. With people like Knox, it's like a debate between somebody, say, like a Knox and McCall Bridges, where Bridges is 22. Some people think this is what you see is what you get with him. The upside is there, and he can maybe be a useful rotation guy. But do you really want to use a lottery pick on a guy who's essentially a finished product? Whereas Knox, yeah, you know, maybe like he's like a poor man's Jeff Green, or maybe he's a rich man's Jeff Green, and maybe that's what you want. What do you think of somebody like Knox who's like more of a project?
Yeah, I think that's certainly part of the equation. If you're a team that's can be patient, you can give a guy who's 18 years old some playing time and some leeway. If he gets into foul trouble or he screws up and throws a ball out of bounds on an entry pass, you're not going to just pull him straight out of the game. You're able to develop a player. So I think teams that are focused on development right now, that they're at that stage. Kevin Knox at 18 years old, 6'8", 6'9", athletic, can shoot off the dribble. No doubt.
Right.
No doubt. But for Philly, like you said, that should be factored in. I don't think it should. If there's a guy that slips there, I don't think you should pass on him just because he's raw. But it depends on the evaluation of the player.
It's misinformation season, so I'm taking all this stuff with a grain of salt, but there has been rumors that Philly's trying to get up into the top first few picks. Why would they want to do that? Who is the player you think would be an enticement for them?
I've heard Trey Young's name thrown out there. I don't know if that's
interesting because the ESPN Insider mock has hit Trey falling.
Yeah, to 12, I think, right? I've heard Trey Young's. I don't know if that's for sure the target, but I've heard that name floated it for them and makes sense on paper, right? That he's a dynamic shooter who could play off Ben Simmons, or he can have the ball in his hands and maybe Ben turns into a cutter. Maybe Ben learns how to shoot. I think there's a lot of creative things you could do with Trey Young. I'm not sure what would get it done. Maybe package Fultz with 10. Would you be willing to do that, Chris?
No, I could not, especially not if Trey Young's going to drop. Like, I mean,
I
like we
agree.
just went
I
through
agree.
hell to get Fultz.
I
Let's
agree.
give him one more season.
I just don't know what you would package with 10 to move up. I've heard Orlando at 6 is a team that can move around, but higher than
There's
that.
been a
I
lot
don't know.
more like they might trade out of this spot. I don't know whether that's because teams like Boston have like a war chest, or Clippers with that 12,
Boston's
13.
trying to.
Yeah, they're trying to move around. Tate, I thought Trey Young was going to be a much more hotly debated topic this draft season, but I feel like it's kind of been a little bit quiet on that front.
Because we did it already. I
Okay.
think that we were like, I think everyone's really tired of the fact that we've had the Trey Young conversation where everyone's done the whole, well, he's Steph Curry 2.0, and oh no, he's Steve Nash 2.0. Like, oh no, he's,
Jimmer.
Jimmer, whatever. You know, there's so many different comparisons that we made in January and February, and then he sort of fell off the face of the earth, and everyone kind of tempered what they thought about him. I think for him, he's sort of in a good spot where he doesn't have the pressure of like Memphis is going to take him and say, hey, you're Mike Conley's replacement.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of pressure to come in there, and that's not going to make Mike Conley happy, obviously. So if he goes to the Cavs or goes to Orlando, which is where I hope he ends up
Right.
going, just because there's no pressure there. Like you go and, hey, here's the team, man. Good
Can
luck.
John Hammond even see a human being if they're not 6'9"? Like, does he only start looking at people once they cross that?
It's like Black Mirror. What is it? The Z eye?
Yeah, exactly. He's only got 6'9" lenses. Danny, one thing I wanted to ask about is some of the mystery men, and especially in the lottery zone, because we've been hearing a lot about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who seems to have worked out for no one.
This is my
Talk to no
favorite.
one.
Yeah,
And
this is
talk
my
to no
favorite
one.
thing.
Okay,
This
so
is
let's
my
talk a little bit
favorite
about
thing
this.
in the draft right now. Just because I brought this up on a draft class a couple weeks ago, but one of my favorite things in the past couple years was when Dion Waiters literally sat out of workouts for an entire month, got fat and happy, and then all of these teams started coming over and were like, hey, we want to promise you at this spot. And so he didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And then he ended up getting drafted at 4 when he was originally projected at like number 13 to the Cavs. It was amazing.
It's the ultimate mind game just to play that because it's like, I don't need you guys, you need me.
Yeah,
I'm so talented. And then teams are like, wait a second, like let's look back at the tape. Like, is Gilgeous-Alexander the next Rondo? Let's figure it out.
So I'm of two minds of this thing. So I'm super into SGA. I have also recently just left Malik Monk rehab. So I'm still getting over
Monk year 2,
the
though.
fact that I was like walking around being like, the Sixers need Monk at 3. This is a lock, because I saw him score 40 points once, and I was like, that's all the tape I need, brother. Like, I was really losing it about Malik Monk. So I'm a little bit skeptical about Kentucky guards. Am I right to be so?
I mean, he's a completely different type of player. I think he's much more compatible with other types of guys. He doesn't really project to be, a ball dominant point guard. You know, he can kind of slide, slip through the cracks and kind of fill in where you want him to
That's
be.
what everybody said about Fultz.
He's more like post-injury Sean Livingston, a better version of Michael Carter Williams type of player. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Put that on a greeting card.
I know.
Post-injury Sean Livingston.
Well, I mean, if you say pre-injury Sean Livingston, you're talking about one of the top high school talents of the century, really.
Right. And this guy to start off, he was a 4-star recruit.
Yeah.
So, as Charks had written during March Madness, this is the first time a Kentucky team was led by a 4-star recruit in the Calipari era ever.
Since Ryan Harrow, basically,
Right.
but he transferred in. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Gilgeous-Alexander's interesting because like you guys talked about, he hasn't worked out for anybody, hasn't done any media, has barely done anything at all. Like, even at the combine, he wouldn't say which teams he talked to, which some prospects do here and there.
Chill
but
out, Jason.
it's
Flynn.
rare.
Just like there's only so many teams that could draft
no
you.
kidding. There's only 30, but he's intriguing. I think Cleveland likes him at 8.
Yeah, I was
going
gonna
to
ask
Orlando
you.
does at 6'2".
And then
maybe?
there's another team that's sort of been linked with him that I wanted to ask you about, as since you have your doctorate in blowing it up. Toronto has, through various sources, made themselves open for business. And I think that the long-awaited, never seen Masai rebuild has been floated again. And one of the players that they seem interested in is SGA. Does that necessarily mean that Lowry's on the block?
I don't know, man. They just got to bring in their native son, the son of Hamilton, Ontario, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm kind of into it. Like, I feel like Lowry is probably one of the most. He's a star who has one of the best shots at getting traded in the Jimmy Butler vein.
Okay.
This draft, just because, like what are you going to do with this core of Lowry and DeRozan for the rest of eternity?
And if you're Orlando, right, and you're at 6 and you do want a point guard and you're not really locked in and you don't like SGA, you don't like Trey Young, and you're kind of sitting there and you're like, why don't we just trade for Kyle Lowry? Why don't we get an all-star down in Orlando and see what happens?
And that could be the same thing where it's like Kyle Lowry comes in and immediately like professionalizes the organization, right?
Maybe, yeah. I don't know.
But it's like Jason Concepcion at Network tweeted yesterday, quote, "Can I interest you in a lightly used 6 foot in shoes 32-year-old point guard with weight issues? He plays super hard. What's his salary like? Are you interested? Yes or no?" And his salary, by the way, 2 years, $65 million left on his deal. It's
But
a
Orlando's
lot of
not
money.
going anywhere. Like, if you're Orlando, like Kyle Lowry, at least like another year of
It
Kyle Lowry's
legitimizes you some way.
prime.
No way.
Okay,
No way. Get out of here.
Their leading assist man last year was Shelvin Mack
Yeah,
at
seriously.
3.9.
Yeah, but what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to win games?
No, we're trying to finish 8th in the East and sell some tickets.
Yeah,
That's what we're trying to do.
trying to make Bubba Watson's courtside seats worth it.
Are Orlando fans going to be, whoa, we going to go to a Magic game to see Kyle Lowry?
I don't know. They might do it
They
more
wanted to see Jameer Nelson.
Yeah, and what happens if Trey Young is Jimmer Fredette and you could have had Kyle Lowry?
You know who they would go to see is a really good rookie, somebody who has promise and hope, not the guy who's like
Johnny
towards the
Isaac's
end.
already there. He's already there.
What would you think that is that kind of tension where you're looking to generate some interest about your franchise? Is that the thing that people are going to get drunk on Porter Jr. for? Because it's this idea that because of this one red flag, albeit a back issue, which is never the red flag you want to see,
Goodness.
that you are looking at somebody who is like an alpha scorer who could put butts in the seats every night.
He's an alpha, that's for sure. I mean, he's calling himself like the next T-Mac, the next Kevin Durant, Giannis. So I mean, like,
I could not believe those quotes.
I know,
I
it's
can't believe his
unbelievable.
agent's letting him talk like
So
that.
not only he's like, so
Well,
I like
I heard he's selling him as the next KD too. Like that's what he's billed as, the next KD.
And if you follow the line of logic of these quotes, it's like, yeah, I like to compare myself to these guys. And then towards the end, he's like, it's such an honor to be compared to these guys.
You did it. No one else is saying that. You were 9 from 29 from the field in college. Like that was your entire stat line. Like I don't know how we've gotten so far here. And I blame the Pacific Northwest. Because they are
Really?
they are all talking about he's the best high school player they've ever seen. I think that's a disservice to Jamal Crawford.
Absolutely.
And I think that's offensive to Jamal Crawford. I hope that Michael Porter Jr. is good, but all I hear is hip problems. All I've seen is back problems, and all I'm waiting on is for someone to convince me why he should be one of these top picks.
It's weird because everybody's like, oh, he's a top ranked high school player before the season. If he had stayed healthy, he'd be the number one pick. It's like, or maybe we'd be like, he's a mid first rounder if we saw him the whole season. We might look at him and be like, oh, it'd be nice if he could, if he was a little bit quicker when he turned the corner.
So we're
his
seeing
ball
that
handling, I don't
mystery
know.
is kind of leading to some of the potential value here, right? I want to ask one more thing before we get into some quick hit questions, and that is the question that we're going to be talking about throughout the rest of the month and into July and into our barbecues is what's up with LeBron and whether or not there are any tea leaves to be read depending on what the Cavs do on draft night. Now, by all accounts, I mean, I have no idea. There has been some contact between LeBron and the organization, although I don't think it's necessarily on the
I got to
draft.
clean out my locker.
It might be
when can I
like,
pick up my
what day is a
stuff?
good day for my guy to come by to
It was
clean my
LeBron's
stuff out?
camp, not LeBron specifically on that report. I
Yeah,
think.
LeBron's camp,
yeah.
and I don't think we're on Shabazz Napier levels right now, but like at least some contact. Is there anything where is a Mikal Bridges the kind of person you draft if you think LeBron's coming back, but there's more of a project to draft if you think he's going?
I still don't think Mikal Bridges is old enough to meet
I know.
LeBron's, you have to be this old to
Right.
play with me mold. But I mean, he liked Trey Young, right?
He did like Trey Young, but I think the most telling thing about the Cavs right now is that LeBron James, if he was really invested in what the Cavs are going to do with this 8th pick, we would see reports coming out. Like LeBron really loves Mikal Bridges.
Right.
And likes the way that Izzo molded him and thinks that he could come in and play right away. I haven't seen one of those stories where like LeBron is involved at all. So that makes me say, I think, the Cavs are making their own decision.
Right.
Like
Unless
outside of LeBron.
this is
Forget him.
forget LeBron or
Yeah,
forget
like,
Bridges?
who cares what he thinks?
Kev.
No, in all seriousness,
Kev.
he's one of the reasons why you signed JR to the money you did, to Tristan Thompson the money you did, this blah blah blah, so on and so forth. Who cares
Wow,
who he
huge
wants?
statement from the pro Kobe Altman lobby at this table.
No, but really, what difference does it make who he wants? Like the decisions haven't been great in the past.
Well, okay, so I guess the
might not even keep him
value
there.
of that pick is along packaged with love or whatever. Is that it would be if you were going to restock again around him, you would think that we would be maybe hearing more about the Cavs shopping that pick.
I mean, I think that's probably the only thing that would appeal to LeBron is trading that pick for some type of established player. Maybe, in a fantasy land, you get Damian Lillard for Kevin Love in the 8th pick, CJ McCollum type. I mean, maybe you go for Kemba Walker.
I got to be honest. I'd be
right?
pretty
I
into
mean,
that if I was Portland at this point
for CJ or Dame
for Dame.
or either. Ooh,
But I'm a pretty pro CJ running the point person.
Me
I like
too.
that.
I would love to see CJ with the keys to the car.
Yeah, like
driving that all
CJ and the
time,
hardened playmaker role.
Be
All
fun.
right, guys, I want to wrap us up by doing a couple of quick hit questions. If you can jump in, and if you want to pass, just pass.
Man, that's it. I want to go for an hour, man.
I know. We got. I want to ask about busts, and I want to ask about risk here. So, Tate, starting with you, who do you think is the riskiest pick in this draft?
It's Michael Porter Jr.
Okay.
And I think that a lot of people will say, well, there's also a high reward, if you do take him and he turns out that he is the star that everyone thought he would be when he was 18 years old. I don't like back problems. I don't like anybody comparing themselves to Giannis. He said that he can back down people with more aggression than Kevin Durant. He's a better shooter than Giannis, and that most people compare him to T-Mac. I mean, that was the quote. So if I see that and I'm a GM, I'm like, my God, this guy does not want to work hard and thinks that he's already set.
Somebody somewhere in a front office, though, just put a cigar in his mouth. It was like, I love it. I love the confidence.
Vlade Divac.
Yeah, probably.
Jerry West.
Kev, outside of Porter, any other bust potential here?
Trey Young.
Okay.
We wrote about him last week on The Ringer. Obviously, he has the shooting ability. He's not Steph. He's not a transcendent shooter. He's a really, really good shooter, maybe even a great one, but not Steph.
Because of the release, right?
Yeah, because
that
of the release.
that was the problem in college when people started getting out on him. I mean, he couldn't get his shots off.
Yeah,
and that's a problem.
And the defense is going to be a problem no matter what happens in the league.
They'll hunt him
forward,
down, especially in the playoffs.
They're going to hunt him.
Yeah.
And if there's a lot of pressure on his offense to be great, and if it's only very good, I don't know. I'm not sure about him meeting expectations.
Can I play devil's
10.
advocate for 1 second here with Trey? Is what if Trey does wind up on one of these better position teams or teams with a stronger backcourt, stronger perimeter offense, and he's allowed to fill a role rather than carry all the water like he did for the
Philly?
Sooners?
Like next
Just
to Ben,
saying,
that type of thing?
I think that would be an interesting spot for him to land, and I think that would also be a place where he gets shielded a little bit. He can't, he's there. There's going to already be a lot of intense spotlight on Markelle coming into next season. Trey could maybe find his feet a little bit. I don't know. It seems like a good. I'm not even actually that big of an advocate for it, but I do think that it would probably be suitable. Danny, any other people who you think outside of Porter and Young who are big bust potential?
I mean, I really like him as a prospect, but I mean, Mo Bamba is out there. You know, I haven't seen any of the workouts.
He seems stuck at Dallas. He seems stuck at that 5th pick.
It's just, I've seen prospects shoot from the outside when they haven't shown that ability in the past. I saw Dwight Howard shoot those pre-draft workouts. I saw Willie Cauley-Stein hit 3-pointers off the dribble.
How about Andre Drummond this summer shooting threes in a gym, making every single shot?
Hassan Whiteside.
Yeah.
So I've seen this. I've been scarred before. That's always a concern that's weighing on my mind. But at the same time, it's like, oh my God, the 7-10.
This is going to sound really dumb, but what if Andre Drummond can shoot threes and the coaching staff just hasn't enabled him in a position to do it? What if Willie Cauley-Stein can hit spot-up corner threes and the Kings just haven't done it?
They've tried.
Aaron Baines suddenly, out of nowhere.
This is something that you and I have been
threes.
talking about ever since you joined The Ringer, though, is this idea of fit and this idea of the talent might be all in and around the same area in this draft. I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But so much of this is going to depend on the environment that these guys land in and whether or not they can be developed and what they're being asked to do. So let me flip that question on you a little bit. What's the spot you don't want to go if you're one of these top 10 draft picks?
Besides Sacramento?
Sure. Sure.
I mean, I guess it depends on which player you are. I don't know. I'm not sure. I need to think about this.
I would say Orlando does not have a good history of developing their rookies, but it seems like now they have a new regime and John Hammond does have a pretty good history in Milwaukee of finding guys to do.
How about Cleveland? Because there's so much uncertainty moving forward where will LeBron come back? Will he not come back?
Is Ty coming back? Yeah.
And if he doesn't come back, then all the focus is on you to be the next savior of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And if you're not, it's scary.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Jordan Bells, the non-lottery picks who could bolster some of the better teams in the late first round. Any guys that you're keeping your eye on in that regard that you think will drop down? Little Grayson?
Kevin's going to love this. I do think the Boston Celtics are going to take Grayson Allen with that pick. He's so perfect. I made the joke earlier. I'm pretty sure Danny Ainge thinks that's his kid, and he wants to have him on the team. He needs to have just a little bit of a spitfire out there, And in the same vein as Marcus Smart, I would love Marcus Smart to mentor Grayson Allen and just basically say, lean into it.
Yeah.
You are this person that you're trying not to be. Mm-hmm. Trip people, punch people, spit on people.
You think Grayson should become an honerary Morris triplet?
Yes.
They should just roll together to hang out?
Yes, absolutely. And he just wears the Morris jersey and everyone's like, those two guys look exactly the same. Who is this guy? They think he's his PR person. I do think Grayson on the Celtics is just too perfect to pass up. I like him going 26 to Boston.
Kev, what about you? What about a Jordan Bell for you?
Josh Okogie from Georgia Tech. I don't know if it counts as a Jordan Bell, but then again, we didn't think Jordan Bell would fall all the way to the second round.
Always count on Tate to give an amen to a mid-tier ACC guy.
Georgia Tech. Josh Pastner got him right.
Okogie's very interesting. He's got a baseline as a 3-and-D type of a guy who can spot up for you and play hard on defense, but there's also a little bit of ball handling potential there where maybe there's more to his game. Only 19. He'll be 20 when he's a rookie. Maybe he develops into something more than just a 3-and-D guy as he develops.
The new Will the Thrill Barton.
I like it.
Danny, what do you think?
Along the lines of KOC's Josh Okogie pick, Kyrie Thomas out of Creighton, just a fantastic defender. I love watching this guy play defense. He's one of those guys has that kind of Drew Holiday gliding aspect to the way he plays defense. Has shown a lot of 3-point potential, has shown some playmaking off the dribble potential. Just a classic plug and play 3-and-D guy, I think.
We both love him.
I don't know how late he's going to last, but I can't wait to see Zaire Smith.
Oh, yeah.
And it would be awesome whether it's Milwaukee, Insider has him mocked at, or somebody even better than that.
He's definitely one of those guys you peg as a Zach LaVine type where he might win the dunk contest, next year. And people are freaking out about him. Who's this Zaire Smith guy?
Does he have other elements to his game that are NBA ready?
He can. Not
He's
really.
very wishy-washy. Yeah.
It's so weird to project him just because he played such a weird system at Texas Tech. He was basically a 4 and a 5 when he's Avery Bradley size.
Really?
Yeah.
So one interesting possible scenario for him would be if he went to the Nuggets and he played kind of he was a cutter for Jokic. That would be awesome for me.
I like it.
I would love that fit for him where there's not, because everybody's oh, can he learn how to play point guard? Can he develop his ball handling? It's no, who cares? He put him in a situation where he's around all other playmakers. Like you said, Jokic, even Harris can handle a little bit. Jamal Murray can handle, which I think would allow him to be who he is. And that's just a guy without a position. Somebody who just does weird things for you and does them well.
This is such a big men laden draft. And it's Ayton and it's Bamba and, Bagley, Wendell. Are we going to look back? Because we've had this conversation towards the end of the playoffs on group chat, Kev, where it was sort of we're going into this draft and all the top picks are going to be big men. And then are any of these guys going to be playable in the spring and summer?
I think it's tough. I mean, you can go back to I think it was the 2002 draft where it was Eddie Kerr was in the top of that draft, and it was just a big problem. My thing with the big men is I think that you can get Brandon McCoy and Mitchell Robinson in the second round, and maybe you just say, hey, this is the 7-footer I want. I don't have to deal with the whole prima donna stuff. I don't have to waste a high draft pick.
Yeah,
and I can get a guy and maybe he's Andrew Bynum for 3 years, and then I ship him out.
Interesting. I kind of almost wish that there was. This is definitely a year where I wish there was a third and fourth round of the draft so that we could see a little bit more creative pick packaging and being you know what, we think we can do something in this area or this area of the draft. You're not going to get that kind of thing because these picks are so valuable and you might hit. Kevin, what do you think about this tension with the big men being valued high in the draft, but not being valued when it comes to the postseason?
I think back to 2009 when the Warriors drafted Steph, and then 2011 when they drafted Clay, and then 2012 when Draymond Green fell to the second round. And
Harrison Barnes.
Harrison. I can't forget Harrison Barnes. And the conversation then wasn't oh, can you fit a big man in today's modern league? Nobody was talking about Steph, Clay, Draymond fitting into this super switchy small ball era or whatever. Right now, it's not
because it didn't exist.
It didn't exist.
Right.
And right now, it's sure, theoretically, this could continue for the next 20 years. This could be the next style of play where everybody's playing small with the guy like Draymond on the 5. My question is, where are those Draymonds? They don't exist. Draymond is unique. He is honestly probably one of the most unique players we've had in league history. Someone his height that can play like him. Big men are going to play in the 2020s. They're going to have an important role.
Especially if these guys hit. Yeah.
Gold State's not going to last forever. They're not going to be the team that you have to beat forever.
No, because the Kyle Lowry-led Orlando Magic are coming.
Yes.
But Danny, this is actually the way it works, right? If Ayton's good, if Bagley's good, if Bamba's good, if Embiid keeps playing well,
right,
you start getting 5, 6, 9 teams with good centers who can play both ends of the floor. And teams are going to have to adjust to them.
How you counter is by having one of those dudes too. And that's something that both me and Kevin have talked about frequently. I wrote about this a couple weeks ago. Yeah, that's just the way it works. And big men have always dominated the league. That's this is an aberration where we're at.
And let's be honest, Clint Capella was a major problem for the Warriors. I mean, that's why like that series was getting messed up because Clint Capella was playing so well. And if you have a guy that has the skill set of Clint Capella, but at another level, like a DeAndre Ayton or something like that, I mean, I don't know how they counter that. JaVale McGee has to play.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. It's like, sure, maybe this season, if you're the Memphis Grizzlies this year, Marvin Bagley might not be able to play in the series against that guy, or Mo Bamba might not be able to. Wendell Carter might not be able to play against Golden State. But what about in 2021?
Right.
When that's the time where you hope to be a contending team. At that time, the league's going to look different. Teams will be playing differently. There'll be new trends. There'll be new star players.
Anthony Davis could be on another team by
Who
then.
knows?
He could be on a team that is going to the
Warriors.
finals, the Warriors,
could be
the
on the
Celtics,
Warriors.
whatever.
Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we go, I want to ask this. Give me one prediction for draft night that you think would make the normal fan like me or whatever flip their table over in shock. Something that we don't see coming.
Robert Williams getting drafted in the top 12.
Okay.
I think if Robert Williams, he impressed a few people that I've heard just from that North Carolina game in the tournament, and then he obviously what he did to Michigan really hurt him, and he played horrible in that game and back-to-back series. So it was basically you get to see both sides of the guy. But I know there are a lot of people that are really high on him still and think that he could play the 5. And Robert Williams, I think maybe
I probably
even the
won't
Clippers.
flip my table if that happens. I'll probably just Google Robert Williams.
He needs a nickname. Robert Williams is not enough.
Similar to that, you might Google Jerome Robinson
Okay.
if he goes in the
Boston
middle of
College.
the first round.
Yeah.
But the one that I think would get people really flipping their tables is if Trey Young falls out of the top 10.
Interesting.
Someone could fall with SGA rising, Kevin Knox rising, whether it's Michael Porter or Trey Young, someone I think could fall.
That's Trey.
Two childhood friends.
What about you, Danny? Give me a crazy prediction.
Dante DiVincenzo going to the Warriors.
Yes!
That I think people would flip their heads with that.
That
It's just
would
like,
be-
okay, the dude dropped 31 in the championship game, and now he's going to the champions.
If
All
he
right,
makes
cool.
it that far.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
You mean he wouldn't still be there?
We'll see.
You think he could go up higher than that?
I'm really hoping Melvin Frazier goes there. I love
Ooh,
Melvin
Oh,
yeah.
Frazier.
I love
Tulane.
that fit.
Yeah, Tulane.
All right. Well,
Big dunker.
We're going to do a live mock draft at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. So you probably are listening to this on Wednesday morning. If you are, turn on your Twitter because we're there. So Kevin, John, and Danny are going to be doing a live mock draft hosted by me. And then on Thursday night, we'll be doing half an hour before the draft and throughout the first round, a watch along on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Tate will be there. All the Ringer kids will be around hanging out, watching the draft. We're really excited for Thursday night because we don't really know what's going to happen. It's going to be really exciting for Tate, for Kevin, and for Danny. I'm Chris Ryan. We'll talk to you soon.
Basketball is very good.